So like I'm sorry that I upset you or what I did there.
Yeah. The worst thing I did was I did not understand the magnitude of the bike situation in
Oh yes.
Amsterdam, and I kept almost walking straight in front of bikes, and I was probably ruining so many people's morning commutes because I was just walking out in front of every bike possible.
That happens to me in New York though. That has happened several times. Excellent. I think we just got the recording button. Brian, we just want to make sure, can you hear us?
Hey, I hear you. Can you hear
Yes.
me?
We can hear you now.
Okay.
Welcome, Brian.
Having a little trouble because it always works in the test, and then when we go live, it doesn't work. So that's what's happening to me, but hopefully we've got it resolved here.
Excellent. Yes, we can hear you. You're coming in clear, and it's top of the hour. So I think we can go
Okay.
ahead and get started, everybody. First of all, thank you all for joining us for today's topic. I love this. It's leading with purpose. I have two of my favorite, and dare I say it, the best leaders in the community college space on, right? Yeah, I think you
Yeah,
guys
that's
can lean
right.
into
Say it.
that.
Say it out
Yeah.
loud. Say it louder for those in the back. Yeah.
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 Two of the best and most wonderful, charismatic leaders in the community college space joining us today, but we're really talking about how community colleges are responding and using responsible AI to help drive student success and talk about what student success looks like on your campuses. So thank you very much for joining us all today. I'm going to start by doing a quick round of introductions, and then I'm actually going to have, because I can introduce Brian and Courtney all day, but they can do a much better job of introducing themselves. But I'll start by introducing myself. I am Daniela Norden. I am the VP of Platform Enablement at Element 451. I always get asked what that means, and it's really just a fancy way of saying that I get to hang out with the Courtneys and the Bryans of the world and help them figure out how to use Element to really meet their goals and how to engage students better. My team helps onboard and implement and strategize and consult with partners like TVCC and Wake Tech. So it's always a pleasure and an honor to join our customers and our partners when we do these webinars. I've been here about 3 years now. My fun fact is that I actually started on December 13th. So any Swifties out there will know that that's Taylor Swift's birthday. So it's a big day in my text messaging fields when I get the happy anniversary for being at Element and also the happy Taylor Swift birthday fields. Um, I know, right? I'm going to actually, I'll turn it over to my other Swiftie friend, Courtney. Please introduce yourself before we'll let Brian introduce himself.
Thank you, Daniela. It's great to be here. Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Lewis. I am the Director of Enrollment Services at Trinity Valley Community College, which is located primarily in Athens, Texas, but I have five campuses across 5 rural counties in East Texas. My job encompasses overseeing recruiting, admissions, and academic advising, and I also am element captain for TVCC. I am also a Swiftie. I was at her show Dallas Night 3 in row 13, dead center of the stage on the floor. So big deal here. I feel the love with you, Daniela.
Row
Brian,
13.
row
Wow.
13,
I
it's an
didn't know that.
important number.
It is.
Yep. All right, Brian, what's your Taylor Swift connection?
I'm feeling very 22 today, so
Oh, good.
that's what I got.
Perfect.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian Gann, I'm Vice President for Enrollment and Student Services at Wake Technical Community College. We're located in Raleigh, North Carolina, in the capital. I'm blessed to have a one county service area that is a population of 1.2 million people, and 66 more move in every day, according to our Chamber of Commerce. We served about 73,000 students last year, both that's degree and non-degree combined. And so we have a big mission that Element 451 helps us accomplish a whole lot. And we've been on the platform since 2022. I believe we went live in 2022, and have had a really good experience, and happy to talk today about some of the things that we've seen and some of the things that we've learned. And I am happy mostly that my bracket is mostly not busted, except for any University of Virginia fans out there. They messed me up in both directions. I put the men's team in the Final Four, and they are out. That was a mistake. And then the women's team took out Iowa, which was I had in the Final Four for the women's bracket last night. So any UVA fans out there, you've messed me up in both directions. But yes, go Hurricanes. We lead the Eastern Conference, and hopefully this is going to be our year that we break through and get out of the Eastern Conference Finals and into the Stanley Cup. So we'll see what happens.
Amazing. I don't, Brian just beat both of our intros. Courtney didn't even reference Taylor. I mean, the one Taylor Swift reference and took it and ran with it. That's
Yeah.
incredible. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started, and we're going to do this panelist style. So I've got some questions for Courtney and for Brian. But I want everybody here joining us to know we are recording. You will get a recording, a link to the session afterwards. We will make sure to send that out to you. We are also monitoring the chat. So I've got my colleagues, Daisha and Josh from Element, monitoring the chat. If you've got questions, we will save them and answer them live at the end. So make sure that you post those questions in there, and Josh and Daisha will make sure that I see them and that we get them to Courtney and Brian as well. Any other questions, throw them in the chat. We'll make sure to get to those. But I just want to start out by saying, hey, what are we going to talk about today? What you can expect and really what that looks like. So we're really going to talk about AI enablement. We're going to talk about student-centered practices, and you're really going to hear from two folks who have been able to do this. So these are two long-standing Element customers. They were with us pre-AI, post-AI, right? And thinking about the ways that they personalize their support, the support that they provide to students, thinking about the difference in what the world looked like and what student support looked like 3 years ago before OpenAI, before, natural language models helped. What does that look like now? How has that changed some of the way that these teams operate? Two very different campuses, two different, parts of the world, two different parts of America that we're talking about here. So we're really looking at ways to give you all the tips, tools, tricks that you need. A place to start is often a question that we get. So if you've got questions around those, or if we're not hitting those with Courtney and Brian today, feel free to speak up and make sure that we get a chance to answer those questions. But let's go ahead and dive right in, friends, and let's start with let's actually, you know what? I saw The Sound of Music a couple of weeks ago, so we're going to start at the beginning, a very good place to start. And my first question is going to go to you, Brian. How does Wake Tech define student success? What does student success mean to Wake Tech? And how has that framework shaped how you've approached AI, or maybe not approached AI at the beginning?
I guess raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens is not a good
I,
place to start for this question. So I will start with saying, the way that we think about success. I talked a little bit there at the opening about what our service area looks like, and so I'm fortunate to serve one of the most blessed economies in the United States of America. We are in the Research Triangle of North Carolina. There are 35 institutions of higher education within a 30-mile radius from where I'm sitting right now. And so we are in a blessed economy. We're in a very competitive space when it comes to higher ed. And so our work, how do we distinguish ourselves from 35 competitors in 30 miles that includes a major private institution, a big, well-noted public flagship, and another well-noted R1 public, all of whom are great partners and transfer partners for us, in addition to then all the many other institutions that are very nearby. And
you're still there, Brian. Oh no. Oh no, we lost him. Oh, after I told him he was still there. He
I'm
disappeared.
sure his answer was going to be very great
I
and
know
eloquent.
he was really nailing it, and he was going along with my references, which I love. But when Brian, since Brian dropped off, Courtney, we're gonna have you field that question. What does define student success at TVCC?
So
Or
I'll go until Brian gets his bearings back again. I'm kind of in an opposite situation from Brian and where he's positioned, where Brian and I are both are in the community college space, but we could not be more opposite community colleges from each other. We are a very small rural community college in East Texas, and our service area or our total enrollment is just around 6,000 students. So almost 50% of that is dual enrollment. Um, and so the type of success that we're looking at is also kind of outlined for us by the Texas funding system for community colleges. just within our last couple of legislative cycles, our government decided to switch from a headcount-based formula funding to a persistence and retention-based formula funding. So we, community colleges in Texas as a whole, very quickly over the last couple of years have had to adapt to new approaches to enrollment, new approaches to admissions, to student success. What does this look like for our institution? Because it was no longer a numbers game. It was how do we get them here first, but how do we keep them here? And so that to us looks like successfully completing credentials, transferring to universities, being employable in actual labor markets, and being able to prove that to ourselves, but also um, to our students, that not only are you going to be coming here to get an education, you are going to be successful, you are going to make it through, and you are going to be able to get a job at the end of this. But more so for us, because we are in such a rural area, where I want to say close to 70% of our students self-report as first generation college students when they're coming in through our admissions process. They don't know what they're doing. They've never done this before. They don't have family to support them through this. We have adult learners. We have ESL students. We have students who sleep in their cars, who don't have money for food, who can't pay their electrical bill, who live an hour and 10 minutes away from the closest college campus to them and have to drive here every day and make decisions about, am I going to get my kids to daycare, or am I going to get myself an education so I can get a job? So at TVCC, student success is, yes, finishing the credential, graduating, transferring, getting a job, but it is also, can we help you navigate those barriers that are going to impact you from being able to be in our classrooms at all, period. So we want you to have clothes on your back, to have food on your table, to keep your lights on, to get your kids to daycare, to have the books and the technology and the internet access, because we're in a rural area. Half of our service area doesn't even have access to satellite internet, or any sort of reliable connection, or any sort of community building that has public Wi-Fi. So there's a lot of barriers that students have to overcome. And I think student success for us is being able to knock down every possible barrier to keep them moving forward.
I love that. Brian, you're back. Welcome
Hello.
back.
I'm so
Yes.
sorry.
No.
The gremlins are after me. I don't know what's happening. I'm trying to make it stop. I'll wrap to say, we, as I was saying earlier, we're in a very area that's very attractive. We have lots of people moving in every day, which is great for those. And so we know that Wake County, North Carolina is a talent magnet, but where we have struggled is to be a talent ladder. And so Raj Chetty from Harvard, and who's done a lot of research around economic mobility, has found Raleigh to be one of the lowest of the 100 major metro areas in the United States. Raleigh is among the lowest, where if you are in the lowest quintiles of economic health, to be able to move to the highest quintiles. And so that has been our North Star for student success over the last 5 years of a strategic plan, is how can we help more people who are born here, who grow up here, access the amazing jobs that are available right here within miles of their homes. And so that's a real driver for us. We do also serve a pretty significant international student population, so they are first generation in this country. And our percentage is a little different from what Courtney was sharing about. We think about a third of our students are first generation, but that third means 10 to 11,000 individuals.
Mhm.
And so it remains, even with all that great economic opportunity, there are still many people who need our help, and for whom Wake Tech is the pathway to economic mobility, who are the pathway to workforce development, who are the pathway to those amazing jobs in Research Triangle and the surrounding area.
Yeah, I love this. There's definitely some parallels there, and it sounds like this is resonating with people. Stacy just posted, they've got similar issues, and they're in a very urban West Coast university. Housing is expensive, high cost of living, but it seems like you're both really focused on these outcomes, on workforce dev. Let's talk about the friction points that you have. Those are some tall orders that you've put out there for your communities, and for the communities at your colleges. Courtney, what were some of the friction points that you Saul and Brian, same question to you when Courtney gets a chance here.
So I think a lot of people, especially in the community college space, but everywhere, we're strapped for resources. Finite, number of hires we can make. Everyone wears multiple hats, only so many hours in a day. Students have very unique situations that need very unique approaches from us. And while we want to do our best to support students, it is almost impossible to give every student the same level of service. And so, kind of our journey started pre AI with Element, and we found ourselves in during COVID. We were kind of the only option for higher education in our immediate area. We had kind of had a very reactive mindset for many years where we were here. So why wouldn't they come to us? We were the only option. And then we found ourselves during the pandemic, high schools were closed. Our traditional recruiting methods were no longer an option. And we were tanking enrollment during the 2020, 2021 timeframe. And we had just gone through a very rocky SIS implementation. We were tired, exhausted, and now we're facing this inability to access anyone. We didn't have an ability to text, to email, to do anything. So we were really just looking for a solution to solve that friction and that pain point of a lack of communication, just how to send emails more effectively. And then over the years, it was, okay, this has solved this gap. We're able to communicate. We have this ability to outreach like we haven't ever before. We're able to maybe do a little bit more face-to-face communication. We were starting to hear things about AI and it's going to take jobs and it's going to do this and that. And there was this fear as we were approaching this time where AI was just sort of blooming in our industry. And we kind of decided to step back and take it bull by the horns and say, okay, you know what? We lost everything during the pandemic. We hit rock bottom. Nothing that we had been working or had been doing before was working anymore. Why not try anything and see if it sticks? We were just kind of in a why not sort of era. And that really, really worked well for us. That flexibility and that open mindset was really what changed the game with the help of Element coming along and us becoming partners going almost 6 years ago now, which is crazy that we started with Element almost 6 years ago. And I think that the lack of ability to outreach, the lack of ability to scale that outreach once we had the ability, and then we were strapped for resources. I don't have enough people to do and to provide the service that I want to provide for students that I know that they deserve and what they need. And so that's where we were struggling and where we were looking to solve some issues.
Yeah, Brian, how about you? I feel like scalability, there's a lot. You're the largest community college in North Carolina. Scaling has got to be an issue for y'all,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we are. We are the largest institution of higher ed in our state, and we're one of the 50 largest in the United States. And so
Yeah.
our challenges are often about scale. But we started our element journey in 2020. When I arrived at Wake Tech, we did not have a CRM, and so I have said in many spaces we were doing enrollment management with Excel, duct tape, and prayer. We were just doing the best we could with the tools that we had, but I knew early on it was going to be something that we needed to solve for to manage our volume even 6 years ago. And so that was really where we began our story with Element. The other thing that I was facing was our processes were too hard and we knew it, but a lot of them were in well-intended things that become barriers when you're trying to manage large volumes. And so we brought in a consultant and dear friend Melinda Karp from Phase Two Advisory Services in Colorado, who who walked us through, who did focus groups. And I don't know if there's anybody here from Reynolds Community College in Virginia, but they went through this issue and called it the Reynolds Runaround. And so I turned that to be the Wake Tech Walkabout. It was, they're arrows, they're running, they're moving in different directions, and we were struggling to help people move seamlessly through the process. And so that became where we started. Then the pandemic hits. And so we bring element up across the heart of the pandemic. It does help us resolve some of those things. It did help us with better communication. And we bottomed out in the fall of 2021, like a lot of community colleges did. We all kind of survived year one in decent shape, or many of us did. But then as we went into that second year and things drug on, we saw the drop, and then we began to see the recovery. And while I know that not every public two-year community college has recovered, many have well recovered and exceeded. And so we have grown almost 30% from that 21, 22 year to current. And for us, that's thousands of people of growth. I mean, it is entire colleges of growth that we had to try to find a way to manage. And so then that friction point becomes we can't hire our way out of that growth in terms of support services in the enrollment funnel, in the support funnel, all through the process. We have been fortunate to add some staff, but we aren't able to add at the rate of almost 30% growth from 2022 to now. So those were really the two pinch points and the pain points that we were looking to solve with our partners at Element.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like resources is just, it's one we hear across the board, right? Not enough hours in the day, not enough people, scalability, ability, hiring the right people, what does the workforce look like now? One of the other things we hear a lot about is, well, how did you go about getting buy-in? And I kind of posed this question. I'm going to go back to you, Brian, from a leadership level for something like a CRM. I mean, coming off of Excel spreadsheets, but also to push that, Courtney mentioned, we were throwing anything at the wall. We were kind of thinking, why not? Wake Tech was a little more cautious. And so how do you make that leap from CRM to AI or CRM with AI? Talk a little bit about the process for creating consensus and getting buy-in and being able to move forward so that you can right size your resources.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a challenge of scale, finding a way to meet our staff where they were as we were feeling this growth across this challenging period. We were facing the great resignation and lost a lot of staff in 2022 and 2023, that era when the growth was taking off. And then, oh, by the way, ChatGPT 3.5 drops on November 30th of 2022, and Element begins to take a total different direction, and that led us to look at some different opportunities. But you are right that we had resistance and concern, and I think we've had to negotiate that a little bit with the flywheel effect of going slow to go fast.
Mm.
And so we definitely started slower than what um, our implementation folks wanted us to do, and what the CEO at the time wanted us to do, and was pushing us and coaching us. And I appreciated the pushing and the coaching, but knowing that we had to help people. I think keeping conversation going, like not letting people put their head in the sand, was really important, like talking through what it meant. We have been very open in our institution that this is not about replacing people. It's about trying to scale, trying to be sure that we can support at the scale and scope of Wake Tech. And I know Courtney and I were together at a conference talking about some of these same things, and one of the questions was, I, the person was in a collective bargaining state saying, yeah, we've gotten a complaint about this trying to take jobs, and so we have been very clear, this is not about taking jobs. I'm also clear to say it can change the nature of jobs. It may change the nature of what duties looks like. But I think open conversation about that's important. We've been very fortunate to have leadership from our president, Dr. Scott Rawls. He has said openly and loudly, we will bring AI into what we do. And so we've had support from the very top of the organization about doing that, and then support on then thinking about how we implement that across the organization, because it looks different inside the classroom versus in the support space or the enrollment space that's my responsibility. So I think that those have been important. We, like many institutions, we've established an AI leadership council that is working to bring ideas across the institution. We have work groups happening all across the institution that are bringing that. So I think the normalizing it, the not being afraid of it has been important, encouraging people to try it, but try it within the guardrails of good practical use and good use cases. I think all of those things have helped us advance the cause and minimize the fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian, what you've said is just a really nice segue. Courtney, I know you've got strong feelings about human in the loop. So, Brian, what you're saying about not replacing jobs and about finding the right mix of tools, technology, people, process, and Amelia's kind of hinting at this too, Courtney, tell us how you're keeping your humans engaged with students, what the AI has been doing that works for you at TVCC, how you're still delivering a personal experience and not replacing human staff.
Yeah, something that is so important to me and what has been important to my own research in my own academic journey, what has been important to me as a student, and what we know from decades and decades of research in the higher education space is that persistence is tied to connection. Students, beyond anything, need to feel a connection, a personal relationship with a staff, with a peer group. They need to feel like they belong. And I am unwilling to sacrifice connection and sense of belonging to something like AI. I will not do it. It is not worth it. I would rather sit with duct tape, Excel, and prayers than sacrifice that. But my staff serve 6,000 students across 5 campuses that are all 45 minutes away from each other. It is impossible for them to realistically be able to give that level of service. And that I hire, and Brian and I share the same hiring philosophy, I believe, where I don't care if you already know how to work a computer system. I don't care how many years of experience or what degree you have. I care about how you treat people. And if you are going to be contributing to the culture of TVCC, because we know we used to have this saying at TVCC where we would say, if we can just get them here on campus, it'll be great. They'll love it because they'll be able to feel how much we care, because we do. We love our jobs and we love our students. Um, However, they don't have enough hours in the day. Like I said, we're strapped for time. We're strapped for resources. There's only so many of us, and we're trying to pull off this very large scale operation with very, very few tools. And so using AI, we were able to, and from the beginning, the goal of us implementing AI was only to free up our staff to be able to do the things that they do well, which is make connection. We want our students to come into our offices and know that we care and we're listening. And this isn't you have 30 minutes of my time and I have to get through X, Y, and Z processes, and they're very large and cumbersome. We use AI to lift the burden of some of the monotonous, repetitive tasks. We're very clear on our website with our AI agents. This is a chatbot that you are speaking to. They can answer you so much, but if you have further questions, you can ask to speak to a human. And so, the questions we get: where do I go to submit my application? Where do I go to see the status? How do I turn in a shot record? How do I turn in test scores? Where do I get this? How do I do that? The chatbot and the agents can answer those questions. And that is less time that my staff have to spend copy and pasting messages over and over and over again, like we were. Uh, However, what it does allow them to do is spend 45 minutes to an hour talking with that student who is confused and scared and doesn't understand and has never done this before. What it does do is allow my advisors to reach more people, to have further outreach. When students apply at TVCC, we have a kind of admissions list model, if you want to call it that, where we saw this pain point where students were getting handed off to too many departments, kind of like, the Wake Tech walkabout. We had like the Trinity Valley, like, I don't know,
Whirlwind.
tornado where you were, just getting sucked up into every office you possibly could, and all the information was coming at you a mile a minute. Using AI, we were really able to step back and streamline those communications and make it feel unified and solid for our students. We decided, we had an issue with melt rate where students were applying, they were getting admitted, they were never registering, they weren't making it into our classrooms. And so we wanted to make sure that they had connection earlier and they felt like they had a real person there on the other side as early in the process of that enrollment funnel as possible. So we got rid of admissions. What does that mean? Students got assigned with their academic advisor from the moment they apply. And with the help of AI, those emails are able to go out. We have agents who follow up more consistently, who are able to target students and help our advisors do some really intentional intervention and early outreach that opens doors for them to build connections and longer lasting connections, not only earlier, but longer and at a scale that is much more manageable for them.
I love that. And it makes such a difference knowing your person, the second that you like walk in the door or fill out an application. You guys are just teeing this up so nicely because Brian, the next question goes to you. I know you've got a specific example about a student on Christmas Eve, no less, where AI really helped you identify, and people in the chat are asking, are there specific examples of what has streamlined process or when have you been able to reach students? Courtney did a great job sharing, some of the stuff that's going on in the background there, but I know you've got a great story here too, Brian.
Yeah, I'll share just a couple of examples that come to mind. One is an anecdote, but it stands out for me. We have in some of our offices we've been doing pilots with our AI agents answering inbound phone calls after hours, and so just a particular example that we saw. We had a call come into the registrar's office at 1:30 a.m. on Christmas Eve, and I have no student success plan that would ever answer that phone call. I just being honest with you, there's no scenario where we would have picked up the phone on December 24th at 1:30 a.m. to help. And what had happened with that student was I guess they were home and it was the holidays and they were looking at their account and something had gone wrong in the payment deadline process before the winter break, and they realized it and they panicked and they did the only thing they knew to do, which was they found a phone number and they called it, and there was no human being on Christmas Eve at 1:30 a.m., but Reggie, our AI assistant for the registrar's office, answered and really did a very good job, recognized the anxiety in what the student was saying, did a very good job providing calm, providing we can figure this out. Was also very honest to say, we can't solve this right now. We are going to need a staff member, but here are three things that you can do to be ready on January 5th when staff return so that we can get this solved. The tone when we can see the transcript in the back end of element of the call, the tone shifts. The answer is, hey, thank you for your help, is how the call ends. To just jump cut to the end, we then can see that transcript when our staff came back in on the 5th. We're able to connect with the student and able to resolve the issue. And so, rather than having to leave a voicemail to an empty box, there was reassurance in that moment. And so I think that was really a huge differentiator for that one student. I'll give you another bigger picture example of what we've seen from implementing AI agents. And I'll say we have 14 AI assistants live now. The last 6 of our initial plan build out are in development. I think they'll be live probably, if not by the end of this month, by the middle of April. And so we'll be at 20 additional staff members in AI form that we would not have had otherwise. But so since we've been fully live with the first round of those assistants, our admissions line phone line, which was the most by volume called line at the institution, across a 9-month period, summer and fall registration. We saw a 20% drop in calls to that line and to the college's main phone number. Both of those dropped 20% from January to September. So 2 periods of main registration happening across those. But applications were up 19% and enrollment up 13% across that same time period. So we saw that go down. So I think for people who are comfortable in the space, it's reducing inbound phone calls for us and then letting us do a better job with people who aren't as comfortable and who need more help because we've given them better opportunity. We've reduced the load on staff. We've gotten answers sooner in a just-in-time way to those who need them. And then for those people who need that extra touch, who need that extra information, they can get to a human staff member where others were able to be served by an AI staff member. And I think that's the most important shift that's coming is helping our leaders, our managers understand how to lead and manage AI staff alongside human staff. So I think that's something that's really important for folks to think about as they think about what implementation looks like at their institution.
You both just took out like the next five questions that I had with
Okay.
these answers. So one of my questions was, what has changed operationally? And Brian, adding staff to your website, like 20 staff, that's huge
Yeah.
increase. Courtney, you talked about eliminating an admissions department. Like that is a huge operational shift, right? My question was, what indicators did you have it was working? Okay, applications up 19%, enrollments up for both of you, across the board at your institutions. What did I leave out here? Like I've got one more question and then the chat's blowing up. I want to make sure that we get to those questions. But what would you tell colleges? Where to start? What advice do you have? What's sort of the catch-all here? Like you guys are crushing it. They want to know. Give them, the answers. Courtney, you go first.
I think we started small and we're able to really focus on one area first. Whenever we first started with Element, our main purpose was the ability to send emails and text, followed by perhaps a new admissions platform. We would dabble. We took that and within a year had restructured how we were doing recruiting, admissions, and registrar, pulled our registrar back to no longer be a front-facing office and really focus on revamping the student experience post-COVID. Then we went through this other iteration where we now had AI in the mix and we were able to outreach like never before. We were seeing these application numbers rise like we hadn't experienced ever in our life. We were able to do communications like we had never before, but we were seeing that gap. Then we took it to the next level. Okay, the Texas formula funding model shifted. We need to stop thinking about it as a numbers game. This is now going to be about how do we support students? How do we use AI to support students? I mean, again, our retention department, our student success department, hand entering spreadsheets. How do you realistically do this using AI agents, targeting students who, they're getting that data from your LMS systems, looking at our students logging in every day. They haven't logged in 3 days. This AI agent is going to go target the student and say, hey, we're noticing you haven't logged in 3 days. Is everything okay? You might get a response that says, yeah, actually my laptop's broken. That AI agent then points them to our student, we call it HQ, Cardinal Resource HQ, like our support hub, where they say, here's a loaner laptop, or do you need a more permanent solution? We started embedding AI, and I think starting small, improving that the tools that we were using and our methods were working really well in one department, spread across our campus. And like I said, we were really lucky to be in what I kind of call the TVCC renaissance, where we were open to new things. Nothing we had been doing before worked for us anymore. We hit rock bottom. We had to crawl our way out, and we were willing to throw anything at the wall to see if it stuck. But we weren't willing to sacrifice the core of TVCC, which is that we love our jobs and we love our students, and we're going to get them there. And so proving from those small little things, just the ability to send a personalized text message, our ability to answer after hours, to then we had one, like the original version of an AI agent was just called a chatbot. And just that Bolt bot agent spent, I think, with our very primitive data, that first week or that first cycle of admissions, our AI agent was using or was completing 40 hours of answered text messages, live support, and emails a week, which is more than what my staff work in a week. And so it added on a whole other person of capability just in our very early days. Now we're moving into this next realm of let's use this AI to target students who aren't doing well academically. Let's use this to target students who are at early risk of dropout because they're self-reporting as first generation, or they're filling out our basic needs survey and they're saying they don't have internet, they don't have food, they don't have housing, they don't have money. And using AI to do targeted intervention that way, like we have never been before, I think that's really been groundbreaking. And now we have a culture here at the institution where it's like, why wouldn't we? You know, that's what you want. You want it to be, why wouldn't we? Why not? Why would we? And it takes a long time. You know, that doesn't happen overnight. It took us a couple of years to get our feet under us and even figure out what this was. And we were really lucky to be Element partners very early before AI, and we had the opportunity to grow with. And so I definitely understand whether you're in a leadership position or maybe you're in a department and people are having these conversations around you, it can be very intimidating now when you're like, oh my gosh, there's all these resources. How do I even make this work? Start small, start with one thing, one pain point that you can solve, refine that process, build on it. You know, do stair steps, building blocks. You will eventually get there. Don't try to do it all in a day.
Love that. Brian, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean the way I think about these things is sort of the reverse engineering design process. The way that I approach implementation at just about anything is pilot to scale. I know what the end result I want out at the end of the road, and that road could be 6 weeks or 6 months or 2 years away. But I know what I want the end result to look like, and then let's back our way into what that looks like. We do a lot of piloting at our institution, but it's not pilot to go, no go. It's pilot to adjust, to learn, to tweak, and to go again.
Mm.
And then let's get a little bit bigger, and then let's get a little bit bigger. We talk a lot. I make people very hungry because I talk a lot about the first pancake, and I borrow that from, it's not mine originally, but that, when you put the first pancake on the griddle, it may be too brown, it may not get done. And so you adjust, you tweak, you get the heat just right. And that second pancake, that really starts to feel good. And I think that's how we've approached AI implementation. Dan Roberts asked in the chat about how did we feel like we were seeing success on a daily basis. And what I would say to Dan is we do feel like an overnight success that took 5 years, because it does all come together over time. But the reality is we built building blocks along the way. Element, for those that are Element clients, is a gigantic tool. We call it a CRM because it's a tent pole of our institution, along with the SIS and the LMS, but it can do so much more and has the capability to do so much more. So we started very early. So for us, in 8 weeks, we were live with events, we were live with RFI forms, we were live with a lot of tools, and then we have just continued to work in sprints and loops to implement new and new and more and more. And for those that either aren't Element yet or thinking about it, amazing new tools come out every quarter, it seems like, and sometimes every month. And so part of the work is keeping up with the tool that's there, and then managing the human change in the background and in making that work. So there's multiple change management things for leaders to think through. In that, I do believe in champions. I do think you need your early adopters to say, hey, this is working and it's cool and it's helping me. And I think when your peer level people hear that from a director or coordinator or a person that's closer to that than to hear it from the president or hear it from me, and that's more top down. And I think it all comes together, right? So it all ties together. I think my advice to anybody would be is to pick somewhere, pick a problem, solve that problem, and then pick up the next problem and just keep going in a loop. You'll probably never finish implementation, which is okay. Internalize that, accept that, and then just keep moving and keep iterating and keep implementing. Like right now for us, what we're trying to do is bring as many data signals in through Element so that we see students who are in trouble faster, sooner, and that AI can help us identify that and then help us deploy people to that challenge, because I don't want to deploy technology to that student that's struggling. I need the technology to do the fundamental level one thing so I can deploy the people to that student that's really struggling. But if we can get enough signals into Element to help us know who's in trouble or know who needs something, then it can help us take our retention rates and our graduation rates that we've already been able to raise so much over the last 5 years even higher.
It's great, great answers. Both, I love the reverse engineering. You start at the end and work backwards, and I love Courtney starting at the beginning and working towards the end. You guys met in the middle. It was the Goldilocks moment for us there. Thank you both. Those were all of our questions. And Brian, you have already sort of dipped into the chat questions. I would love it if you guys would stay and field some of these questions. We've got some really great ones, but a moment just to say thank you for sharing your experiences and your stories and giving the audience and the participants something really to latch onto and work with. So thank you for that. I've got this great question from Scott, who's curious about what AI platforms colleges may be using to create this agentic environment for enrollment assistance, and not referring to agent-like knowledge-based, dependent bot, but agents that can access with student permission, student SIS information. We're biased. We use Element. But Courtney, I think are you testing this SIS plugin for us too? Maybe talk a little bit, and you are too, Brian. Great.
We are.
Talk about, how you're building this out and what information these students can access and a little bit about the environments that you're creating here.
I'll take part of that, and then Brian, if you have anything different. So we are beta testing an SIS plugin. Like Danielle said, we are biased because we are Element clients, so I can't speak to potential other AI platforms that are out there that you could do similar work with. But for us, looking at holds on a student's account, holds are not a process that we manage within Element. I always tell people Element is an engagement tool at its heart. Like this is the face, this is the outside, the pretty shiny exterior that students experience. The brain and the nervous system is our SIS. And so holds on students' accounts, whether that be a transcript or a balance due or whatever it might be, those are going to be managed through a process in our SIS. And so using that plugin is what we call it to our SIS between Element agents through proper identity verification can then access some of that data and be able to communicate with a student about next steps, how to resolve that hold, how do you make a payment, what are your payment plan options, do you know how to turn in a transcript, do you even know what it means to have an official transcript, and no, that isn't a diploma. Some of those things, that's our goal, that's our baby step, our phase one of getting of testing that plugin. So that's the use case that I'm going to share.
Yeah. So what we've done so far right now is use it to let students ask about specific admission information from the MCP connection. Our gold standard will be when they can get an update on their financial aid um, application and package. Like that's where I want to get. We're not there yet, but that's what we're working our way to. But I also want to speak to there's been a couple questions I see around the FERPA guidelines. And so even with where we are right now with the admission, if student wants an update on their admission packet, they're going to get multi-factor authentication through back through the AI agent that says, I'm going to send you a PIN code in your email if you'll enter that code. And so there is a level of FERPA protection around those things. We are like every one of the rest of you that are public community colleges. We are facing fraud apps at a big volume too. And so tools and strategies in place to help with those things. But I'm pleased with where we are. We want to keep pushing at that at that plugin to go further. And I will know we are an overnight success when a student can get an update on their financial aid package through that connection. So that's where that's the end goal for me with that particular pilot that we're working on.
Love that. Courtney, anything to add around these FERPA, guidelines or responsible AI practices that, Ryan, this is a great question from Ryan in there.
Yeah, that's obviously a huge concern of everyone wanting to make sure that the information that AI has access to and could potentially be turning around to students is protected. And that was actually something very early on because TVCC was very fortunate to be one of the very first AI in its original form was called BoltBot adopters with Element. I think we were maybe two or three in the lineup of schools that signed on when it first released. And there was a time where in our testing and kind of piloting this, we saw where an agent just straight up said, "Oh yeah, your application's da 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 da." And we were like, "Oh no, 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 bad, bad, bad. This is bad. We need to fix this." And what I would say um, is ensuring that you have proper verification, doing multi-factor, single sign-on, ensuring that once a student is admitted, we only send communications to a student's school email, which then is also protected under other multi-factor authenticators. And we are very, very specific about the type of information that we will share in those manners. And we always kind of have the caveat with students where, if you want further information, here's what we're willing to divulge in this manner. If you want further information, how about you come in and talk to us, or how about you give us our office a call and a human representative would be happy to assist you. So being very transparent up front. Again, I think that's the most ethical way to approach these conversations with students, especially when it comes to their information sensitive data that is protected under FERPA. Being upfront, this is an AI agent you're dealing with. I will help you to a certain extent. Then after that, if this doesn't, meet your needs, we would love to talk to you in person. And that gives you an additional barrier of safeguarding to protect their data.
Yeah, I think what we're both kind of, or what everybody's kind of circling around here is, these tools only work as well as the data that you put in there. And actually, Lori's got a question specifically around SIS and data information too. They're currently in the implementation phase and they use GensBar, J1. Would you recommend integrating their SIS with Element in the early phases of launch? If not, how would you handle updating info between systems? I see both of you nodding. Both of you have
Yes.
current integrations. You know how important it is to have these two systems syncing and talking to each other. Talk about the why behind that.
Yeah, so I'll say we started out with our element integration going. So we're an Aleutian colleague institution, and I wanted to answer Amanda Stilgenbauer's question. So Courtney and I, Trinity Valley and Wake Tech are both Aleutian colleague institutions. I don't know if there are other pilots out at like Banner or other places for the MCP connection. Danielle, you can speak to that. But
Yeah,
also we went element to colleague, excuse me, we have a statewide common application that we were driving from the statewide app to colleague back to element, and we did that for the first 3 6 months and realized that is definitely not the way to do this. And so we now drive all of that integration back to element. Yes, absolutely integrate your SIS with element to get the absolute most horsepower out of it that you can, because what your if not question's exactly right. Otherwise, how are you going to get up to date information moving back and forth? We use Ethos as our middleware to make that happen. I know there are other products out there, but it can certainly be done.
yeah, I see before you jump in, Courtney, Ethos, it works for Banner and Colleague. I see a lot of folks asking, Banner, Colleague. Our user community is a great place to connect with those other institutions too. So feel free to jump in that user community
And
too.
and
But
stay tuned. We're headed to Banner at some point in
oh,
the
that's
future, so I
right.
can come back and talk about that because we will absolutely figure it out for Banner. And I mean, I used Ethos at a Banner college before being here, and so I cannot imagine that it cannot be done.
Yeah. We actually started and went completely live with our application in Element without a ethos integration and API integration to colleague. And we roughed it out for probably a year and a half before we all came back to the drawing board and said, oof, that was rough. And I definitely, looking back, I think that was one of the biggest mistakes of our implementation, was not integrating with our SIS as early as possible. Not only it took the SIS integration alone, just for application processing, took it from 30 minutes by hand per application per processor down to 3 minutes start to finish to process and image documents per application. So the speed in which we were able to increase our processing time was just it was revolutionary, just that alone. Now you're talking testing colleague plugins where you're getting that data. I think someone else asked about courses, grades, registration information. Yes, we do pull that in through an integration with our LMS. We are a Canvas school. So, all of this data is flowing in. I think Brian said it earlier. We want as many data points in Element as possible, so that way we can do as much outreach, as much targeted intervention, see the whole picture for the student in one place, and service students from one access point. And I think I went off on a rabbit hole there, but anyways, yes, as early as possible. It is well worth it. It is worth the time that it takes, and you will set yourself up for success far in advance.
Yeah, thank you. Scott, I can answer your question too. We do offer native LMS integrations with Canvas, with Blackboard, with D2L or Brightspace, and we're working on one with Ethos too. So know that that's coming as well. One more question for y'all before we jump here, and it was a question about Courtney, I think you mentioned in the first week the 40 hours, but it was a question. Here it is. Were there any of those conversations later that had to be corrected based on information that the bot gave? So maybe you both can kind of talk about how you monitor the information, how you're cleaning your knowledge base, how you're making sure that the right information is getting to those students.
Yes. So that 40 hours is successfully bot alone handled conversation. So that was no human interference had to take place. The agent successfully handled that conversation for start to finish. We do have staff in our office who part of their daily routine is to monitor all conversations being handled by AI agents, and they step in if information isn't being communicated effectively or the student chooses to have a conversation with a human staff member, human team member, and so that's how that process and that number came to be. However, those agents are driven off of a knowledge base, and it is garbage in, garbage out. If you don't feed it good information, the agent is never going to be able to give good information back out. So we do regular knowledge base scrubs, is what I call them, where we go through, we review everything in the knowledge base, usually once a semester, if not more frequently, or if new things, new policies, new processes come out. We are always updating our knowledge base, sending out to different departments who have agents and saying, can you review your information? Is there anything you want to tweak, you want to add? I give them the opportunity to test, which is something that Brian does as well. You test it and try to trick it and try to, catch it and make sure that it's answering everything, no matter what way you ask it, correctly before you let it live for students. So there was never a time where I had major concerns that this AI agent was out there just going rogue, spreading misinformation. Everything was very intentional, very targeted. When we first started, I let the 5 departments who were going to be using an agent give me their top 20 or whatever amount of, frequently asked questions or frequently given information in a spreadsheet. And we then built a knowledge base off of that. Then we tested for a week, and then we went live. And then from there, we've obviously built and gotten better and better. But that's how we manage it. Garbage in, garbage out. AI is only as good as you make it and allow it to be.
I love that. And Brian, you answered Anthony's questions too. Are the Balts bilingual? They are multilingual. They take on over 100 languages at this point now, which is very, very cool. We are at the top of the hour, but I know more questions are coming in. If you want to hear more from Courtney and Brian, they are both presenting at this year's Engage 2026 conference. So I encourage you all to register and to attend. I will be there too. So it's like the dream team back together again. I won't be presenting with them, but I will be there. And if you just want to try out AI, talk AI, if you want to talk CRMs or higher ed or student success, Engage is a great place to be able to do that. But I just want to thank Courtney and Brian both for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you two, to see what you all have been doing in Element, how you've been scaling, how you've been resourcing, how you use the tools and features and functionality to really engage with your students. So thank you for taking the time today, and thank you everyone for joining us. It was a pleasure. Dare I say we do it again next month, guys? What are you doing,
Yeah, we got to.
April 23rd, right?
Got to see how everybody's brackets play out.
Exactly. Exactly. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.